Welcome back to the Daily Dope Show. I'm your host, the Brand, over here. Um, and yeah, we're gonna go ahead and go over the August updates for Michigan because there's some stuff going on. I think we need to cover. Uh, so this just dropped today or whatever. Michigan takes a bite out of medical pot foods with bans on infused butter, cheesecake, and jerky. This is Beth LeBlanc from the Detroit News. Unbelievable. So I'm going to go ahead and really rip through this. Hummus laced with marijuana is off the menu. So is pot tinged banana cream pie, cheesecake, and frosting. Michigan cannabis chefs will be restricted to certain foods under new emergency rules from the Bureau of Medical Marijuana Regulation, a development that has some medical pot advocates disgruntled. But marijuana-infused popcorn can grace the shelves of newly licensed provisioning centers. The same goes for marijuana graham crackers, marshmallows, and granola. Wow, the black market sure is about to get a diverse portfolio, ain't it? What is going on here, guys? I guess they don't trust us to be able to put food in a fucking refrigerator. Anyway, back to the article. Largely, anything that is shelf stable and does not require refrigeration can be sold as an edible medical marijuana product, according to the state bulletin released last week. That is so far only affects 2 medical marijuana processors. Yeah, but there's companies that already in Michigan exist that were making things, and they were hoping to become a commercial entity, but the specific products that they made are now banned in your emergency rules. Now, I don't know the exact specifics of that, but that's what I'm hearing. If anyone knows more about that than me, please somehow get a hold of me. And don't do it on Facebook, because I don't go to Facebook very often. The list of approved and prohibited forms of edible marijuana in the bulletin is not exhaustive, but should serve as a guide for good, safe product. Spokesman David Harns said he noted that the rules apply to processors for items they prepare and sell and not items people make at home. Okay, that's interesting. That is a very interesting distinction right there. So obviously caregivers will be making these types of things for patients, butter especially. So to just say that butter is outright banned is not a very good, it's not a very good way to put it. Now I'm guessing that anybody getting caught selling any marijuana product outside of a dispensary is doing something illegal anyway. So unless it's something between you and your patient as a caregiver, as we've seen many times, that's what they will enforce. However, they won't enforce that if you're at a licensed facility. So for some reason, the law is that it's legal to sell medical marijuana products to patients that are not your patients. You can't even be a caregiver and have any patients. You're just an employee at the dispensary or provisioning center, whatever you want to call it. And you know but if you're outside of that, if you're a caregiver, you can only provide to your patient that's listed as your patient. So anyway, the bulletin lists several examples of what constitutes banned refrigerated foods, including meat and fish products, milk or dairy products, ice cream, vegetable jams or jellies, canned fruit, melon, tomatoes, caramel apples, and leafy greens. Among those items that can be made and sold on the state's infant medical marijuana market, fruit jams and jellies, granola, chocolate-covered pretzels, dried pasta, coffee beans, and vinegars. The state will require proof of additional processing for certain foods, including marijuana-infused salad dressings, sauces, beverages, pickled products, and salsa. The elimination of any refrigerated or frozen food significantly restricts the number of ways patients can purchase their medicine from provisioning centers, said Rick Thompson, editor and publisher of the Michigan Cannabis Industries Report. From a patient perspective, there is a more friendly way to view the rules than the way they're doing it. It's possible more leeway could be applied, he said. But the banning of butter is what most curdles the hearts of the medical marijuana industry. Medical marijuana patients use cannabis butter on items that range from toast to brownies, Thompson said. Quote, that eliminates one of the main ingredients used in an awful lot of cannabis treatments, he said. The emergency rules come as voters prepare to consider in November a ballot measure that would legalize recreational use of marijuana. Under the proposal, residents aged 21 years and older could generally carry up to 2.5 ounces of the drug or possess up to 10 ounces in their home, but smoking would not be allowed on public sidewalks. I mean, it's like every time they write an article about legalized marijuana, there has to be something in there for the people that hate marijuana, you know. So just continue to be used to that. There's nothing we can do about it. And now this is I mean, we find out over in another article here exactly exactly what Kevin Sabat has contributed to this campaign. So I guess that they have donated $275,000 to this campaign to fight marijuana legalization in Michigan. So when Kevin spends that kind of money on something, he wants to do something. He wants to get something for it. And I, to be honest, have not seen anything from these anti-marijuana groups in Michigan. I mean, the main one is basically Healthy and Productive Michigan. I got their Facebook page here on, shortcut mode, and it's garbage. All they do is push the same articles that all the other propaganda, anti-marijuana people are pushing, and nobody cares. Nobody's liking it. Nobody's sharing it. There's more hate than like. And the shares are all the prohibitionists sharing, or somebody that's slamming it, like using it as a way to make a point. And then, you get these people here. And what happens, and because here's how I know this, is I think I'm blocked from commenting on here. As you can see, there's no space for me to like put a comment in for my account. But not everybody got blocked. There's a lot of people that did comment on this article, because I seen this when it first got posted 20 hours ago, and it had a lot more comments on it. But what happens is these guys, Healthy and Productive Michigan, they go through and sanitize every post they ever make, and they delete comments, and they leave these ones on here. I don't know if you read any of these, but these are just the people that are helping troll the internet with these anti-marijuana sentiments. And they're all like people that work in the medical profession. Who knows? United. A lot of it is a bunch of, people that are anti-marijuana. Whatever, potpourri of those people. That's who these people are. And we all know that the people that are anti-marijuana, usually they have an agenda. There's a reason why they're anti-marijuana. Has nothing to do with what they're talking about, ever. It's just that they have some kind of agenda and a reason to be against marijuana. One thing I've learned about these people that are anti-marijuana is that most of them, they've never smoked it. They don't know anything about what it's like to smoke marijuana. And we're going to see more of that later on in this clip. So anyway, moving along, this is what Kevin Sabat has to say in Michigan about what's going on here. Quote, "This has nothing to do with the vote in November, which would allow ice creams and candies and sodas to be infused with pot, says Kevin Sabat, president of the Alexandria, Virginia-based Smart Approaches to Marijuana. Quote, the real question is, why are we allowing products such as 99% THC-infused gummies, candies, jellies, and concentrates to be allowed at all in Michigan? What does that even mean, 99% THC-infused candies, gummies, and concentrates? 99% what? How can you have a candy that's 99% THC infused? There wouldn't be candy left. It would just be fucking hash. What's 1% candy? Like the chocolate and the sugar and the milk? Like, what is that? One molecule of each? and then 99% THC? Dude, Kevin Sabat is just goofy, all right? At this point in time, Kevin, you're so fucking goofy that nobody ever in the history of intellectual anything thinks of you as anything but a clown, all right? And I'm not even talking about people that want marijuana legalized and end the drug war and whatever else. I'm talking about everybody. Prohibitionists, anti-weed people. You're a clown. You're a complete failure. What have you ever done that was a success? Advise presidents to keep doing horrible marijuana policy? Your whole life is a joke. You should just get out of this shit while you still can. I mean, there's got to be a future for you in something else. All these end up being, here's him again, all of these end up being accidentally ingested by children and adults. So you're saying that all this 99% THC infused candy and gummies and stuff are just, it's all ending up in the wrong hands because, you know, I'll tell you what, you know, if you look at this, hold on, let me see the, all right, see, this is, this is what patients that have caregivers sometimes get. You know, it's just a bag with some cookies in it. The label says hemp. These are hemp chocolate chip, and I think they're made with oatmeal, and there's hemp and different kinds of seeds in it, and it's just infused oatmeal cookie with chocolate chips. I mean, that's pretty much, that's as close as it gets to what he's talking about, I guess. If you go to the dispensary and buy this stuff, or regulated, you know, recreational marijuana markets, they're labeled. It says THC on it somewhere. There's regulations. But what you're arguing for, or what you're trying to say, you're straw manning, is that, you know, is what I just showed you, is that that's what we're doing. We're just like making everything that edibles that are just infused, but you can't distinguish the difference. And that's what Kevin Sabat tried to argue this before. He held up 2 bags of gummy bears or jelly beans or some shit, and he was like, one of these has an ounce of marijuana infused into it, and the other one's just regular candy. Can you tell the difference? Now it's like, what? How are you allowed to walk around with an ounce of infused cannabis in Massachusetts, is where it was going on at the time? How is that even allowed? You're supposed to get arrested and go to jail. And then his careless ass, someone stole it. So the very thing he's talking about, people accidentally getting into somebody else's weed candy, is something that he is guilty of. So here's this asshole, Kevin Sabat, guilty of carelessly losing his ounce of gummies infused, and now he's sitting here complaining that might be happening in Michigan. Well, I'll tell you something, dude. It really isn't happening in Michigan. And what you're talking about is called ignorance. When people take their family members or friends to the hospital because they ate some THC-infused food, that's called ignorance. They don't realize that what they did is not going to kill the person. So that, as the education campaign continues on that, we see less and less people actually going to the hospital, because what happens is when you go to the hospital with a 3-year-old kid that overdosed on THC, and they're going to make a big deal out of it, is you might get a ticket, get your kid taken away, go to jail, get a big fine. get a bad reputation and a felony. I mean, who knows? Who knows, man? Your best bet is to maybe Google it first before you rush off to the hospital. I'm not, cautioning against people exercising the most extreme form of safety when it comes to somebody accidentally eating an infused THC product. But what I am doing is telling you what will happen. You take a 3-year-old kid to an emergency room with THC overdose, it could go real bad. You know what's going to happen if you don't take it? Will the kid die? If you don't take him to the hospital, will he die? Will the kid die? No. Nobody's ever died from THC. Ever. Period. So, I don't know. This Kevin Sabat, he just never figured this out. And now he says skyrocketing emergency room visits in states such as Colorado are being driven by these edibles. Like I said, that's bullshit. And a study of marijuana-related hospitalizations and emergency room visits was compiled in 2015 by the Colorado Department of Public Health. Now remember, regulated sales started in 2014. So the study found that emergency room visits grew from 2012 to 2014. Uh-oh. That's back in the day when they looked like this. Remember those? With just a handwritten thing on there and a bag of cookies. But after the regulated packages that came out, like that has like nice written stuff on it and it tells you that THC is in there and all that stuff, that's when it dropped. That's when the numbers of people rushing to the hospital with kids that ate brownies or whatever, that's when that dropped. Is after the packaging and the regulations. So anyway, there's other studies and they have other things to say about this. Like, okay, we went back to 2001 and looked all the way up to 2015 and we found increases. And it's like, you know what, dude, what you're seeing, and they have this, it went from this to that and this to that. We went from 51 to 347 and we got this number and that number. It's the ebb and flow of ignorance and education and people like being careful and people not being careful. You know what else you see though, and nobody ever really cares about? I never even heard of it. How many times do people leave their guns out and carelessly, and their kids pick the gun up and shoot somebody with it? Because that number is well in the hundreds every year, if not thousands. That's just almost hard to fathom that happens on that big of a scale. And we never even hear about that. It's ridiculous. All right, so the emergency rules for processing centers are separate from the permanent regulations, which will have public hearings before they're finalized in the fall. Whatever, man. The more you guys put pages on your regulations, the less people are going to go to these dispensaries. And after all the stuff I talk about on this video today, one thing you got to remember is I don't think anybody even mentions it in any of these stories that I'm about to throw your way. But there's this tax that you're going to have to pay when you go to the dispensaries in Michigan. They're going to charge you the federal tax. I don't know if it's going to be directly on the receipt when you get it or if it's going to be worked in there somehow. But I've read where dispensaries are going to be held to the standard of having to pay the highest paid rate of taxes, of corporate taxes, which is, I believe it's 36.5. That's a lot of percent on each dollar to tax. 36 cents on every dollar. Ridiculous. All right, so Marijuana Business Daily, they're a business. They're like business oriented. Michigan's medical marijuana industry is girding itself for a heap of disorder, including possible product shortages and revenue losses to the black market unless state regulators approve many more business licenses by next month's deadline, experts warn. Regulators have approved only 16 medical cannabis licenses, including 7 dispensaries, under new statewide regulatory regime that has been bogged down in part by strict financial disclosure requirements. There is one more application review meeting scheduled before the September 15th deadline, when all existing businesses without a permanent license from the state will be required to shut down until they get one. Here are some of the apprehensions spinning around Michigan's medical cannabis industry, as well as a glimpse of business opportunities in what has the potential to become one of the nation's largest medical marijuana markets. Interesting you say that, because I don't think it can surpass California. Even if, I mean, if you look at the outset of what's going on now for the new medical marijuana license businesses, it's not looking like they're going to be able to post the kind of, they're not going to be able to brag about the awesome accessibility that everybody has been used to and the wide range of products, as we just found out in the previous article and other articles and other things and signs, that it's not going to be like it was. So who knows, man? Who knows? So let's check it out. Numbers may not add up, with demand potentially dwarfing legal supplies. Quote, you've got 7 dispensaries to cover 290,000 patients. You don't need to be an expert in mathematics to know that those numbers simply won't work, observed Michael Stein, a Bloomfield Hills attorney who said about 50 of his clients are bogged down in the license application process. That's this new corporate takeover, eyeballing the 290,000 patients as if they're somehow going to wedge out the 40,000 caregivers that are out there. It's unclear how long it will take for things to sort out, but once they do, Michigan, which has the second largest patient base in the country, should regain its spot as one of the most potentially lucrative markets in the country for medical marijuana businesses and ancillary services, according to projections by experts and the Marijuana Business Factbook 2018. The Factbook projects dispensary sales could hit $325 million to $425 million this year, with a caveat that sales could vary widely depending on how smooth the transition to the new regulatory structure is and how long a supply and demand imbalance persists. I'm going to tell you this, guys, that's not going to happen. I don't know. I mean, where are you coming up with this figure? I just don't understand how they're even going to get that much marketable product to the market by the end of the year. When it comes to the medical marijuana, they just licensed growers like last month. Come on. Anyway, that would represent a massive sales increase from the estimated 100 to 150 million in 2017. Who made that money? Because there was no licenses in 2017. So you're talking about the existing dispensaries. You're estimating that that's what they made last year? Okay. I don't know. I don't see how you have that many dispensaries making that little money, but now you only have like 6 or 7 dispensaries. You think you're going to pull 325 million out of 7 dispensaries? I don't know, man. I really don't understand where they're getting all these numbers. But Rick Thompson, a board member at the Michigan affiliate of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, is more skeptical, predicting that many patients simply will go to the black market to buy medical marijuana. And there's no real incentive for them to go back to the regulated market because they'll have taxes, daily purchase limits, hours of operation limits, sales tracking, Thompson said. Not to mention the lack of butter and other refrigerated products. It's going to be weird to go to the corner, the dealer that hangs out at the payphone over at the party store and ask them for a tub of butter and some ice cream infused. Like, what is this? What's the black market coming to? Despite all that uncertainty, entrepreneurs and investors have a reason to be keen on Michigan, and apparently they're thinking that a medical marijuana license is a possible path to early entry into the recreational cannabis, which voters will consider in November. A May poll suggested strong support. And yeah, that's something else we'll see later on in some of this, is that was one of the stipulations for the first 2 years. You have to be somebody that already had a licensed facility under the Medical Marijuana Facilities Licensing Act to even get one of the licenses for the growers. And I'm not sure about dispensaries, but for sure growers, probably dispensaries too. I think those are the main two, and maybe even processors, who knows. But for sure growers. Michigan's medical marijuana industry has experienced turbulence since voters first approved legalization of medical marijuana in 2008. Turmoil is not new to the Michigan market. The new regulatory system, the result of laws enacted in 2016, is designed to impose a statewide regulatory framework on the industry and put the program on stable course. Experts say the solution to averting chaos is to extend the September 15th deadline. However, the date's already been extended from June 15th, and regulators are adamant it won't be postponed further. A group of lawmakers has asked the governor to intervene and extend the deadline. It's uncertain how many dispensaries are operating with temporary local approval, but it is believed to be more than 100 statewide, according to Normal's Thompson. State officials said they're not sure how many medical marijuana businesses currently are operating. The state earlier this year trimmed the ranks through cease and desist letters claiming medical marijuana businesses that hadn't properly filed paperwork for permanent licenses under the new system. If businesses without a state license don't close September 15th, they run the risk of never getting a license. The state will issue cease and desist letters and will note businesses' lack of voluntary compliance in their files, said David Harns, speaker for the Michigan Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs. Laura. The state has calculated 2/3 of Michigan's registered patients are within 30 minutes of the 7 dispensaries already licensed, and says that there will be many more medical marijuana business licenses within a short period of time. But experts still predict a supply crunch and scramble among patients to access medical marijuana. And let's just look at where these are. Here's where your dispensaries are going to be. And then you see like grows, transportation facilities. Before I was like, oh yeah, you within 30 miles. And then I was like, that's pretty much everywhere. If you have something here, you're covered like here. But no, you're not. And the nearest one being Flint, what? Like, that's like an hour drive to Grand Rapids. Let's just go like this. So if you live above there, you don't think that there's a black market up here, and all the existing dispensaries all throughout here are just what, sitting ducks getting ready to get shot like like apples in a barrel or whatever, fish in a barrel, whatever that saying is. Oh my God, man. I mean, we're not even talking about how many, like, that's only a couple dispensaries. Thousands of people need to go to dispensaries just in this area, so that's not even enough to handle them. And especially seeing how we don't know where they're even going to get their product from at this point. Next, we have financial review of businesses have caused licensing bottleneck. Higher net worth individuals who have multiple businesses and or bank accounts especially are being scrutinized, and massive amounts of documents required, observed Stein and other attorneys. The applicants must disclose every business and financial account they have and explain both routine and unusual deposits. So it feels like they're basically, part of the financial disclosure process is to weed out anybody that had a dispensary before, because they're going to have a lot of shady stuff going on in their records, because it was never really legal to make money on the books doing medical marijuana. The problem with being a grower from the old system is that don't help you either. You were never allowed to make enough money to have all the money required to get a facility now. You'd have to go find some millionaire to loan. Hey, if there's any really rich people out there watching the show, I'm a really good grower. I've been growing for over 30 years now, and, you know, hey, I know everything you need to know about every process there is. Come talk to me, I guess, because there's no way I could be able to afford to do this, because I've been a caregiver for a while now, and the only way, you know, to get one of these medical marijuana grow facilities would be to have like almost $1 million. I mean, let's face it. And you got to have the facility already in place, set up, ready to go for an inspector to come in and look at before you even put an application in. So it's just ridiculous. Like, they totally made this design so that nobody that was involved with medical marijuana before are going to be able, it's if you do get in, it's going to be some serious extra hoops, man. In some cases, the state is, quote, scrutinizing every transaction over $1,000, noted Michigan cannabis attorney Paula Givens. State officials, she said, are seeing if bank records match an individual's tax return documents. I mean, what's next, man? Some of these applicants are going to get arrested for their past doings and dealings and maybe tax evasion. This is ridiculous. Applicants also must disclose their property agreements and marijuana sources, or in cases of wholesalers, the retail consumers, if they are currently operating under temporary local approvals. So, so you know, everything that you're disclosing in that one is illegal. So if you're saying, oh yeah, I'm getting my marijuana from this guy over here who's a caregiver, he's selling me his overage, all that's illegal. People have already been arrested for all of that and set precedences and made court precedences so that lawyers have an easy, you know, slam dunk when you get it there. So this looks like a scam and a setup to snarl people that are still trying to do the old stuff. Tell me it ain't. Tell me it's something different. What is this? Now, I don't know exactly how much Jeff Smith researched this, but he sounds like he knows what he's talking about on some of this. And I had to double check some of the things just to make sure that, you know, he was doing an accurate portrayal of what's going on and what the laws are. So now, number 4, despite hurdles, the market is seen as lucrative. Michigan cannabis consultant Connie Maxim Sparrow said she has about 35 clients statewide, and only 3 are trying to position themselves to be acquired within a few years. Quote, so these people are in it for the long haul. There are no statewide limits to the number of medical marijuana licenses. It's up to municipalities to decide whether to restrict the number of medical cannabis businesses or ban them altogether, which, as we've learned, most of them have. Detroit, by far Michigan's largest market, capped the number of dispensaries at 75. One at a time, there were nearly 250 dispensaries. The cap provides an advantage to existing dispensaries in Detroit, but leaves little room for others, Givens said. However, the attorney added the city has no specific caps in other business categories, including growers, processors, transport companies, and testing labs. So those do offer great opportunities for investors. It's ridiculous. Just ridiculous, man. Number 5, out-of-state investors targeting Michigan. Quote, an extraordinary amount of out-of-state money is flowing in, observed Stein. He's seen interest primarily from investors in more mature markets such as California, Oregon, Washington State, and Colorado. Quote, they've already made money and can absorb the carrying costs needed to enter Michigan, Stein said. And that's exactly what I said about the MMFLA way back in 2016 when they were getting votes on it and shit, and it was before it even passed into law. I was like, this is just set up for big investors from out of state that already have huge operations going on to easily just set up shop here. Whereas anybody that's here trying to do anything, there's no way you're going to be able to move forward. Thanks, Lansing. And I'm sure that these people, these out-of-state investors, I'm sure they're just total strangers. Nobody's ever met them. No politicians or lobbyists in Lansing or anybody on the medical marijuana board knows anything about any of these people. Give me a fucking break. Pedro Sotomayor, Chief Business Officer at PPI Consulting Group, a cannabis consultancy that does work in Michigan, said licenses in Detroit are selling for more than $1 million. According to Stein, even licenses in some smaller cities like Lansing are going for around $1 million, while others might go for $500,000 or less. Quote, people want to get up and running now. There's a high value in getting in early. Experts are beginning to see some activity in the transfer or sale of municipal licenses. As of August 8th, Loris Harns noted that 15 businesses had gone through ownership changes, which, as a result, has caused delays in state processing their applications. So now, this is so lucrative for no reason, by the way, because none of this shit's profitable. I guarantee it. But anyway, this shit is so lucrative that you already have speculation starting to unfold. As in, people are buying and acquiring licenses that aren't even going to set up shop. They might have shop already set up, but they just have a nice shop set up and ready to go. Get the license, get everything ready to go, so it's a turnkey operation. By the time they're done, they might have invested $2 million, maybe $2.5 million on it, and then boom, just flip that right over to somebody else and make $1 million or more. That's already something that's unfolding right now. This is in the early stages of it. Michigan is the most corrupt state in the country by all measures of corruption. And everything that you think might be corrupt about what's going on in Michigan, it checks out. All right, you'll see that it checks out. Recreational marijuana's potential heightens interest. And, I'm for regulate like alcohol because it's just a good protection package. That's basically it. I don't care about the business licenses. I don't like them, but they're not as bad of a takeover as this is directly. But at the same time, it's kind of shady that there's so much alike and that it relies on that. You got people that want to get licenses have to already have these licenses. I believe if you're a caregiver, you can get a grow license. There's just so much shit that's not cool. It's corruption. Pure and simple. Everything that's on a piece of paper in black and white ink has corruption behind it in this country. Call me a cynical person. Call me whatever you want. But you got to really you got to look at it reality, man. This is pretty much what we are allowed to do in this situation. Michigan voters will decide on November 6th whether to legalize recreational marijuana. If a recreational cannabis program is approved in Michigan, Sparrow noted, a business without a medical marijuana license would have to wait until 2022 before it could apply to enter the new market. That's because the initiative calls for the state to accept applications in the first 2 years of the program only from those who already have a medical marijuana license. And the initiative calls for that application process to begin a year after the effective date of the law. So if it passes in November, the first license won't even be handed to anybody for 1 year. Yeah, just great. And the survey was mentioned. So, yeah, 61% of voters are in favor of legalization, according to the state survey from Michigan State University. And that was back in May. That was the one they mentioned. And this is August updates in Michigan. So remember that this happened in August. This 80-year-old grandma was busted. She had ate the weed. She had a medical marijuana card that was expired. And that's why we need to vote yes in November, guys. I mean, if you got any reason why we should vote no in November, put it in the bottom. Put it down below. Tim, let me see her. Tell me how they're going to arrest us. Tell me how she's going to be arrested. She had an eighth of fucking bud. How was they going to take her to the county and book her in with that eighth of bud there, buddy? I'd really like to know that, because I don't think that's possible under the regulate like alcohol. It don't even matter how she got that bud. She could have found that bud on the side of the road or bought it in the black market, grew it herself, got it from a dispensary. Could have been medical marijuana. Her card could have been expired for 10 years. It doesn't even matter. An eighth of weed would not have gotten this grandma who has arthritis shoveled into a cold fucking county jail cell for the night in a drunk tank with a bunch of losers who are in there for being drunk, because that's what drunk tanks are, right? And isn't that amazing? We're going to talk to this article later about how this sheriff here in Michigan thinks that legalizing marijuana will increase crime. Because, you know, people will be crazy stoned and they'll be walking around just doing all kinds of illegal shit because of that. Do you guys have a fucking weed tank at the county jail there in Ingham County? You don't got a weed tank? You got a drunk tank, don't you? Yeah. You know why they're called drunk tanks and not weed tanks? Because you don't fucking do that kind of dumb shit when you're smoking weed. You do that shit when you're drunk. Did a whole clip about this, but we're going to talk about it again. Michigan urged to extend the deadline for medical pot businesses. This is Kathleen Gray again, and I really wish our local cannabis writer for the Free Press, who is, so far as I know, a good reporter and doing her work, investigating, fact-finding missions to Colorado and shit. But why the pot? Why the word pot? Can we just get rid of that shit? We're not talking about pots and pans or potholes or whatever. It's a stupid word, man. Anyway, a group of 10 lawmakers and officials in 2 cities have taken up the cause of medical marijuana businesses by asking Governor Snyder to extend the September 15 deadline for businesses to either get licensed or shut down by the state. The deadline has already been extended twice. No, it hasn't. There was 2 sets of emergency rules made, but this particular deadline was only extended once. So anyway, among the applications that have been accepted are about 230 businesses, mostly dispensaries, including more than 60 in Detroit that have been operating with the permission of the communities where they are located. If they didn't get licensed from the state by September 15th, they have to shut down or risk any chance of getting a license in the future. We're on pins and needles here, said Stuart Carter, owner of Utopia Gardens dispensary in Detroit. Quote, my employees are really concerned for themselves and their families. There is a lot at risk here. And this is just super, super absurd that these people have to be, their backs to the wall. And all honesty, guys, it's not looking good. I have bad news for you. They don't care in Lansing. They don't care at Laura about any of that. This is like a carpet bomb of the old system and the old people that are involved in it. And in fact, they want to like carpet bomb the old dispensaries because they know that their supply chain was the caregivers' overage. Is it that simple? They feel like, okay, if we bomb these dispensaries out and get rid of all these old dispensaries that have caregiver overages, then the caregivers have no choice but to quit. And we'll get all their 280,000 patients as customers for our billion-dollar medical marijuana industry. This is exactly the opposite of how to set up a good medical marijuana program. And this is horrible. I was going to make a video about this called Repeal the MMFLA, the Medical Marijuana Facilities License Act of Michigan in 2016. It needs to be repealed. This ain't the first time I said it, but I'm going to say it again, and I'm going to make a video just about this. Hell, this video has pretty much so far been just about that, hasn't it? I mean, you can think of reason after reason after reason that this repeal has to happen. But one of the main things I'm seeing is access to medical marijuana is going to be it's just going to be dismal. It's going to be tough. And then when you do find it at these 7 dispensaries, maybe they'll put another 5 or 6 on the map, who knows. It's going to be expensive. It's going to be really expensive. There's no way it couldn't be. There's no way there's not going to be sticker shock when you see what an eighth is going to cost at one of these provisioning centers. I mean, they got so many people with their hand in the cookie jar here. The cookie jar is about to fucking break. Meanwhile, people that have been blessed with a decent life, like my friend Brian, who I've mentioned before, who is a manager at a car wash, maybe. He works at a car wash now. Used to be a manager at a dispensary. I'm not sure what the pay difference is. It's none of my business. But I know the satisfaction of work difference in something, you know, car wash compared to dispensary has to be really big. And then you got these people like this. They don't know what their future is. After this, who knows what happens? The Ann Arbor City Council passed a resolution earlier this month calling on Snyder to extend the deadline for 3 months beyond September 15th. The city gave approval to several dispensaries last year to continue operating while they were seeking state licenses. Quote, concerns been expressed to the mayor that Laura may not be able to process the backlog of applications for state operating licenses by September 15th, which could require an existing facility that has not yet issued a state license to cease to operate, the resolution said. Extending the deadline beyond September 15th will ensure that medical marijuana patients will have safe, uninterrupted access to their medicine from existing facilities in Ann Arbor. Lansing Mayor Andy Shore sent a letter to Snyder last week noting that it will be difficult for Laura to process the applications before September 15th. Dang it. They'll have to shut down. All right. Anyway, we want to ensure patients have access to medication until such time as licenses can be issued, Shore wrote. Really? That really should be it. Like, if you see a dispensary and it has an application in, you shouldn't have this deadline at all. It's your fault. They've put the application in and paid the money and shit. Now it's your fault that they don't have a license and that they're still waiting for the process. Are you kidding me? You're telling me that these people are about to lose their jobs and businesses, and it's your fault because of this stupid deadline, which shouldn't exist anyway. And you're like, oh, well, it's only fair for the people that have licenses. Bullshit. They don't care. And by the way, there was way more dispensaries anyway. You're talking about now there's like, what, 2 or 3 dispensaries in the Flint area? There used to be like 30 of them. In Detroit, there used to be 250. Now you're talking about, you know, you haven't even licensed. Where's the map? How many is licensed in Detroit? Dispensaries. That's not Detroit. Oh, okay, that's 8 Mile. All right. So there's 3 dispensaries on 8 Mile. Man, there used to be like 80 of them on 8 Mile. Or between 8 Mile, 7 Mile, Woodward, and, you know, you could go in quite a bit east, and ridiculous amount of dispensaries aren't appearing here. So you have 3 dispensaries. Congratulations to those guys. Guess what? That's a lot of action. And now, who are these people? Business name, BlackRock Management. Never heard of them. I hope that's somebody that was there before. And then we got Green Skies or Hoover LLC. And then Healing Tree, Green Skies. I don't know, man. I'm seeing like, okay, this guy's got one way far west too, another Green Skies. So it's the same guy has 3 of them out of 4. And that's just nothing compared to what Detroit used to have, man. On Tuesday, he said the city prepared to license up to 25 dispensaries, including some that have been operating for months with the city's blessing. Quote, the state has taken a long time in doing their due diligence to approve licenses, Shore said. While we're still trying to navigate the process, it would make sense to back up the deadline because there are people who need medicine while the process plays out. The 10 lawmakers from around the state, 9 Democrats and 1 Republican, sent a letter to Snyder and Shelley Edgerton, director of Laura, asking them to extend the deadline to ensure the medical marijuana card holders continue to have access to cannabis. Quote, it is impossible to license enough marijuana facilities, including transporters, processors, and safety compliance facilities to service Michigan's approximately 270,000 patients by the September 15th deadline, read the letter signed by Senator David blah, 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 and all the other people. Quote, the processing delays threaten businesses with arbitrary closures, and their customers are once again unsure if they will be able to get the medicines they need. The letter said it is not acceptable to allow the bureaucratic delay to bankrupt law-abiding small businesses. And not only that, but the patients. So they keep throwing these numbers around like 270,000 patients. Now remember, if you take a caregiver, and let's just say that, let's average caregivers out, you got 40,000 of them. Let's just say they only grow for 2 patients each. That's still 80,000. But no matter how you slice it up, even if each caregiver had 5 patients, there would still be 70,000 patients that never have caregiver meds and have to go to dispensaries. And then the other 200,000, I'm sure no matter how good your caregiver is, you might have to go to the dispensary once in a while. I know my patients probably did once or twice throughout the years, but it's not a big deal. I don't think they've really, it's not that hard to make sure everybody gets what they need when they need it. Unless you don't have anywhere where they can go get it. All right. So that's a big problem. It's a huge problem. They're acting like it's not. Andrew Brisboe is top of the, stack of people acting like this is not a big deal. Oh, we've looked and we made sure that you can drive 30 miles. Boom, there's a dispensary. A lot of people, 2/3, did he say? We know the map. It doesn't look good. This is what it is. This doesn't look good. This is all the dispensaries in Michigan. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And the one in Burton, Venco, Michigan Incorporated. I'm not sure if I've heard of that before or know who Mark Abraham is. But I know that Burton used to have like a dozen or more dispensaries. So, what about anybody that don't live anywhere near that? That's most of the state, man. But Brisboe said that the state was not prepared to change the September 15th deadline without drafting a whole new set of emergency rules. But the department is in the process of drafting a reply to the lawmakers' request. Well, there's your answer. David Harns, a spokesman for the BMMR, said the department is expanding the number of people reviewing applications from 14 to 22 and will add another manager to the license review team. We are pushing hard. We want to get people through the pipeline, he said. Snyder's spokeswoman, Ann Heaton, said, quote, we are taking the concerns into consideration and will reassess the deadline as we get closer to the date. But in the meantime, Carter said he's hoping and praying that Laura either extends the deadline or considers his applications for licenses for his dispensary, grow operation, and production facility, which makes marijuana-infused products. That would be nice. Quote, companies like mine who have done everything right, we've got a license from the city, he said, and now we're at the mercy of the state schedule. And again, I'm just going to say it's nobody's fault but the state of Lansing, Laura, whatever, you know. And if anybody don't think that, you know, this is some kind of thing that they're doing, they squeeze the bottleneck hard enough and it's going to break. So this article I thought was kind of weird because it's basically frames the campaign to legalize cannabis in Michigan, which would be the campaign to regulate marijuana like alcohol or whatever I'm pretty sure that's what they still call themselves. It's not up to them basically to get off to a good start or whatever. They don't have to worry about it. The polling has been in the favor of legalizing cannabis since probably 2015, and, you know, for adult use in Michigan, from all the polls I've ever seen. And it's probably even before that. We could probably have gotten it done. But whatever. What we're seeing here is just like a focus on the groups that are opposing cannabis. That's who this should be framed as, is off to a slow start, because they're off to a no start. I haven't heard anything from any of them, except for that one statement from back here from Kevin Sabat, and it's just one of those generic, easily punching holes in it is no problem. Like, who cares about what Kevin Sabat has to say? But he's so mad because he hasn't seen anything happen. What's going on with these anti-weed campaigns anyway? So let's go ahead and read this. The campaign to legalize marijuana has started out with a whimper just over 3 months before the issue goes to a vote on November 6th. Neither side had raised much money for the upcoming election, submitting second quarter campaign finance reports on Wednesday that looked more like a legislative race rather than a major initiative that could bolster or kill the budding marijuana industry in Michigan. Again, when I interviewed the campaign, I don't think either time they really felt like it was that big of a deal to even worry about these reefer madness groups. And I don't think it is. There's enough people like me around. Every time one of these articles drops, or like I said, with Healthy and Productive Michigan, when we looked at their Facebook page earlier, that's what they're super busy sitting around sanitizing their comment section, creating a nice little bubble to operate in where they feel nice and safe and nobody's, you know, slamming on their articles. But they see all that. They see it. And that's who we want to see it when we write those comments. You know? And I've done my share of that, and I got kicked off of even being able to post on their page or whatever. But that's what we do. We go there and we're like, oh, this is total propaganda. Here's why it's bullshit, and here's what you should be saying. And if you really cared about the kids, you'd be talking about people like Alexis Bortel and other kids who have led the movement to legalize medical marijuana in several states and countries. So I don't understand what you guys are even talking about with this article. But I definitely don't understand what Healthy and Productive Michigan thinks they're going to do by creating a little Facebook bubble and pushing the same bullshit articles that those in the prohibition community, I'm going to just call it now. The prohibitionist community consists of a bunch of different elements right now. You have the anti-Kratom movement, which is a bunch of people in the recovery and psychology areas, field of medicine. If you want to call it anything else, you're a fool, because that's all it is. And when you are a trained doctor in the field of medicine, all you're trained to do is to know what different pills are and what they do to treat different, you know, conditions. That's basically it. There's nothing special about that. It's a lot of learning shit, but what it is, once you get that knowledge, you act like you don't need to learn anything else. So you get a bunch of those kind of people, and they're really arrogant and kind of condescending whenever they talk about weed. They act like they know a thing or two about it because they've met a few weed addicts, which is bullshit. Because everybody they ever talked to was forced to talk to them because they got in trouble because they got caught with weed. And we know that most of those people are under 18 probably. So it's just all horse shit when that's what it is. Man, I got sidetracked. I forgot what I was even talking about. But you get, the prohibitionist community. I'm sorry. Another group of people that are represented heavily in that community happen to be these government people who, for whatever reason. You know, you got Sam and you got the parents opposed to pot or whatever. I don't even want to say their name. And there's other groups like that. That are out there doing the same kind of thing, and basically that community shares these articles that are written by these shillers in mainstream news articles who write for like the New York Times or I've seen the New Yorker. What was that one that we just seen them guys share? And it's just the Atlantic, and just all these people that have always been highly conservative when it comes to marijuana. Now they have these people writing this new form of reefer madness. I call it reefer madness 8.4 because it's like 1984. They're trying to tell you that you don't know what you're talking about because you're just being arrogant and you're not taking into consideration that there might actually be people that go through problems because smoking marijuana is bad. And then they rehash the same old propaganda that they always have. And what they always do is they take one little side effect of weed and then they blow that into some life-ruining event that happened to somebody that forgot their baby in the bathwater while they were eating pizza playing a fucking Super Mario. Know what I mean? That's what they got. They got nothing. So, whatever, let's see, they raised just $1,651, and its major donor, Smart Approaches, this is the last report, by the way, this isn't total, this is just their most recent financials, and that was, its major donor, Smart Approaches to Marijuana, speaking of Kevin, this is kind of misleading, I don't know what's going on here. Kathleen, help me out. Why would you say something like this? They support medical marijuana but not recreational? That's not even true. Sam has proven time and time again that they really don't even support medical marijuana the way they campaign. But we'll give you a pass on that. But they haven't kicked in anything since the $275,000 that I mentioned earlier that basically made it so Kevin Sabat felt like he had to do something or say something. The anti-pot group has $67,000 in available cash, and former Senator Randy Richardville, Republican from Monroe, who is a spokesman for the effort, said that his serious fundraising begins on Thursday. That's what I keep hearing from you guys. I've heard everybody from this group talk about how they're going to start doing some big-time fundraising, and you know, guys, I'm telling you, there isn't that much passion out there for, not legalizing marijuana. It's just not something that's a thing. He said, quote, "Tell people to look out if they see my name on their caller ID. We're just getting started, so I'm not worried about it. I believe our message is very solid." That's funny. I haven't heard your message much, but it's solid garbage. I mean, just the name is kind of like gives you a hint. Healthy and Productive Michigan. One of their major arguments is one of those, reefer madness 1984 type shit. If you smoke weed, you won't want to go to work. And Michigan needs to be healthy and productive. So you'll be in poor health and you won't go to work enough. So production numbers are going to go down. And boy, gee golly, we can't have that. You know, the funny thing about that is that we haven't been like a manufacturing production numbers up kind of state for a while, in case you haven't noticed there, dude. But whatever. I mean, that's a whole nother clip. Josh Hoovey, spokesman for the Coalition to Regulate Marijuana Like Alcohol, which is spearheading the effort to legalize marijuana for adult recreational use, also said the group fundraising is just starting to heat up. The group has raised more than $1 million, including $113,789 in the second quarter. But the bulk of their cash was used to pay a company to gather the petition signatures needed to get on the November ballot. Quote, this report shows that counter to the attacks from the other side, this isn't a big business campaign. We've got national organizations and lots of other small donors, he said. This is merely what our bank account looks like at this moment. We're very confident that we'll have what we need in November and we can get our message out to the voters. And believe me, this is like, I don't know what they were even doing because I didn't notice it. Usually when these guys are doing fundraising, I see it everywhere. I get it in my email, my Facebook, Twitter. It's just like I trip over it while I'm walking to the mailbox. It's ridiculous. So, I mean, and granted, the million that they pretty much spent most of or whatever, between them and My Legalize before them, they have consistently met campaign budget goals and passed them no problem. So, I mean, it's not, I don't see how it's going to be a problem for them to have money to counter anything. And basically, let's just say bring it on. Because Healthy and Responsible Michigan, Healthy and Productive Michigan, and then Kevin Sabat, between the two of them, we're going to see some commercials. I don't know when they're going to start running them. It depends on their strategy. Probably they're going to do like a lot at the end instead of just like kind of a lot throughout the whole time. And they don't even have enough money to even make a commercial right now. It don't sound like. All that fundraising and shit, and they only got like, you know, $67,000 in available cash. Not very good at spending money. Is that just to pay people to sit around on Facebook all day and pop the bubble, make sure that all the bad comments get deleted and the people that made them get blocked? Is that what you're doing? Paying people to do that? I mean, from what I heard, Hillary Clinton campaign spent over $1 million on trolls at one point. That shit ain't cheap. I think I'm done here on this article, but oh yeah, so I guess the group has $21,039 in cash available for the upcoming race and still carries $95,000 in debt. So it sounds to me like somebody needs to do a fundraiser, and that's probably going to be something you'll see. So basically, one more note about the medical marijuana situation is this other article came out and it pissed a lot of people off. I've seen a lot of my friends chiming in the comments section below. For some reason, pediatricians in Michigan have this idea that they need to weigh in on the dispensary count in Ann Arbor. I already highlighted it. We might as well go with reading it. This is kind of ridiculous. Pediatricians concerned that marijuana can be harmful to adolescent health and development are trying to convince Ann Arbor to place stricter limits on dispensaries. Gregory Yannick, a pediatric oncologist at the University of Michigan's C.S. Mott's Children's Hospital in Ann Arbor, said there's a common voice among pediatricians in the community. So I knew that like evangelical Christians were anti-marijuana. I knew that like right-wing, you know, old 1950s Republicans are anti-marijuana. I know that the church sometimes can be anti-marijuana. Oh wait, did I already say that? Anyway, I didn't know that pediatricians were, but I have seen some stuff. So anyway, joined by several of his colleagues at Thursday night's city council meeting, Yannick told council members that potential neurocognitive effects of marijuana on children are real. Quote, the potential effects to a fetus from a pregnant woman who's using cannabis are real, he added. The potential effects to a young child of a nursing mother who's using cannabis are real. This is an agent that is highly fat soluble, meaning that its uptake into the brain, into breast milk, into a fetus are real. All right, that is just the most ridiculous statement I've ever heard, and you guys are just total fucking idiots that are ignorant to what marijuana is. You're ignorant to the endocannabinoid system. You're ignorant to the fact that breast milk is full of cannabinoids, whether the mother smokes cannabis or not. So you should just churn in your fucking doctor's papers and quit your jobs and go grow beards, start pissing on yourself in the alley, and just become bums because you're total idiots. Was I clear enough there? They're basically nitpicking about whether or not you can be 600 feet from another dispensary or 1,000 feet. And it would also talk about whether you could be within 1,000 feet from a school or a daycare center as well. Now, the funny thing about this is none of that fucking matters. Because any of these marijuana dispensaries, it ain't like they're letting infants and pregnant mothers come inside just to smoke weed all day. Like it's some kind of fucking party or something. These are medical marijuana dispensaries that are handling patients. Maybe they're looking out for the future when it's a recreational marijuana dispensary. Who cares? Cross that bridge when you get to it. We're talking about medical marijuana here. So none of their arguments work. But this is one of the things they go with. Yannick said he supports the American Academy of Pediatrics policy statement from January of 2015, which, of course, they've updated since then, but he's going to go back to that one, which reaffirmed the organization's opposition to legalizing marijuana for medical or recreational use and stated its opposition to medical marijuana outside the U.S. Food and Drug Administration regulatory process for pharmaceuticals. The common position for basically scumbags. The AP statement also discouraged adults from using marijuana in the presence of children, quote, because the influence of the role of modeling by adults on child and adolescent behavior. That's such horseshit, by the way. So, just have your own respectful reasons to not smoke marijuana in front of other people if you want to. Generally speaking, you should, because everybody feels differently about it, and some people take super high offense to it. So my best policy that I go with always is I just don't like to smoke weed in front of anybody else. Fuck them. Unless I'm at a concert or a festival or something, and it's just like open air, or even like maybe in the park, not around other people. Just, if there's a bunch of people and kids around, you probably don't want to because it's pretty loud. People will fucking say something sometimes. But to sit here and tell people that you think that dispensaries should be limited, like you're going to find a lot less dispensaries around, which will affect people's, ability to access their medicine, but you don't care about that. All you care about is your feelings, because this is all that this is about. And if you look at Ann Arbor, by the way, there's only one fucking dispensary that's licensed. And it's not even the one that's in the article that they're talking about, or that was just, there was a picture of it in the article. So whatever, this is ridiculous. Here's one more statement from him, noting there's already a 1,000 foot buffer requirement for K through 12 schools. Walkovich argued Thursday night it's illogical to assume the risks aren't the same for children in other settings. Quote, I urge you to heed the medical advice that toddlers and infants are equally and in many ways more vulnerable and to take action to help protect our vulnerable populations within Ann Arbor. You know what? I'm telling you, lady, shut up. Just go away. You don't know anything about this shit. You're full of shit. You're just talking about this because you don't like weed. You live in Ann Arbor, man. It's like the weed capital of Michigan. So, anyway, we're almost done, guys. Ingham County Sheriff. This guy right here. I'm not trying to read this article so critically, but I just got to say that I think they took this guy out of context. Not that what he said isn't completely like wrong and just completely insane, but they should have framed this better, because what I'm seeing here is that this meeting here was like just a bunch of cops sitting around, you know, at the Unitarian Universalist Church in Lansing, basically talking about how recreational marijuana legalization, you know, let's sit around and brainstorm some things to talk about that, to scare people. That's my theory about what this was. That might not be what exactly it is, but whatever. Let's go ahead and read this. Ingham County Sheriff Scott Wigglesworth was unequivocal at a town hall Thursday. Legalizing recreational marijuana will increase crime in Michigan, he said. How exactly? I mean, I know what you're thinking. Right away, you immediately think, no, you can't even, there's no way you can make a case for that at all, whatsoever. But I've read this before from other places and other people and other cops saying the same exact thing. I remember they said this in Toronto, and then the cops all there decided to get involved in making money from it after it became legal. Before it was made legal, when they were trying to fight against it, they're like, oh, the crime, it's going to go through the roof, you know, and basically tax money from legalized marijuana is blood money. The guy that said that ends up being a major player who's going to end up making millions of dollars as a consultant. So maybe that's the business model that they're trying to follow here. I don't know. Sarah Anthony, the panel's moderator and the Democratic candidate for the 68th District State Representative, was more equivocal, saying that she did not plan to make an endorsement on the November 6th ballot initiative that it would legalize recreational cannabis use among people who are at least 21 years old. Paint me surprised. Here we go. Another Democrat that's not going to embrace an issue that 72 to 78, depending on what poll you look at, percent of Democratic voters say legalize marijuana. And here's a picture of Sarah Anthony right here. She's the Democrat that's running that said that. She's not going to endorse the ballot initiative. It'd be interesting to know why, but I can tell you why. Because she's just a Democrat and she don't care either way. Democrats don't have a soul anymore. They don't. They don't give a fuck about any issue. Maybe, I mean, if it's some kind of a push button issue at the moment or something, you know, identity politics related, I'm sure they'll be all over that. But when it comes to real issues that are affecting people that are going to jail because they get caught with fucking plant material, well, we're not going to take a stance on that. I mean, I'd understand if she's like, you know what, I'm a leftist at heart, and I don't think this marijuana proposal goes far enough. I think it should be way more liberal. This is a capitalist, money grab and handoff to some very elite people. It's not like that. She didn't say any of that. She just said, you know what, I'm just going to be a Democrat on this one and not have a soul. Anyway, back to the article. In response to a question from audience members at a forum on police community relations Thursday evening, Wigglesworth acknowledged he believed the ballot initiative would pass, but added, Quote, it will significantly increase real crime in the state of Michigan. How, man? Could you just tell me how that's even possible? Here's his explanation. Quote, we get asked all the time on minor pot stops. If we get somebody smoking a joint, they'll say to us, why don't you just disregard this and spend your time on real crime? Well, if you look at the statistics in Colorado since they legalized recreational marijuana, the real crime, the home invasion, the assaults, the drug driving have significantly increased because you've got a whole bunch of people walking around high, making bad decisions and victimizing other people. That is not true. In fact, nothing in there is true. Home invasions are down in Colorado. Assaults are down in Colorado. Drug driving is down in Colorado. As far as marijuana driving, it has gone down. And it is a ebb and flow. It goes up, it goes down. It's not really a big number to worry about. And it is basically based on bullshit rules and laws that makes no sense and has no science to back it up. So that's not true either. Have significantly increased because you get a whole bunch of people walking around high. No, not really. Walking around high is not really that big of a deal. It's basically not even a thing. Making bad decisions and victimizing other people. We have this thing in my town called the Cannabis Cup like 2 times a year. No crime happens around that. And there's like 5,000 people. This town that I live in is only like 5,000 people. It's less than 5,000 people live here. So more people than what live in my town come here for a whole weekend 2 times a year for a Cannabis Cup by High Times magazine, and nobody gets hurt. No car wrecks, no drug driving incidences, no home invasions, nobody walking around stoned and doing a bunch of dumb shit, because that's not even a thing. So I don't know. Like I said, I don't hold this against this guy because he obviously don't know. All he knows is that right now they arrest a lot of people in Ingham County for marijuana. Because Michigan, despite having a good medical marijuana program, well, they used to, has high arrest numbers for possession and small dealing. A ridiculous amount of people getting arrested every year, 16,000 or more. And Sarah Anthony, you should know this. As a Democrat, you should be running as that being a big problem. But, you know, who knows? Maybe we should check out who her donors are. I really want you to beat the Republican because they're probably horrible on marijuana policy to the maximum. But if you're going to be like, oh, you know, I'm not going to endorse that. What? Why wouldn't you? 78% of Democrats say legalize marijuana. You'll gain votes. Embrace the issue. Make it your issue. You'll definitely get some votes. Criminologists do not appear to have reached a clear consensus on the effect of marijuana legalization on violent crime, in part because many factors influence crime rates and it's difficult to prove causation from correlation. Additionally, the definition of a violent crime can vary. But I guarantee you this, like I was saying earlier about the drunk tanks, you don't have a weed tank. There isn't a situation where people smoke weed and go around and beat the shit out of each other, or go around and rob each other, or they smoke weed and now all of a sudden it's time to just crash your car into everything that you drive by. That's not how anything is played out anywhere where marijuana has ever been legalized. So whatever. Lansing Police Chief Mike Yankowski was circumspect when asked about the issue following the forum. He cautioned that the data on recreational marijuana is still limited, but did say that illegal drugs, as a general group, contribute to crimes such as homicide, assault, and robbery. Yeah, when they're illegal and the black market puts a ridiculous value on them so that people are actually willing to die or kill over small amounts of marijuana just because it's worth thousands of dollars. So it's not like legalizing marijuana will do anything but improve that condition. But here's what he has to say about that. If recreational marijuana gets legalized, you will always have an illegal market that goes alongside it. You have the illegal market now, that's all there is when it comes to recreational. So what you're saying is you want to contain and maintain that black market and the illegality, so you guys got something to do. That's all you're saying there, man. And there is no illegal market that would go alongside legalized marijuana if the regulations aren't too ridiculous, and B, it isn't super expensive to where the black market easily can quality and quantity you. So whatever, it's just ridiculous. So it was legalized in Washington and Colorado in 2012. They've had legal sales now for almost 5 years, guys. 9 states and the District of Columbia have legalized recreational marijuana. What is the holdup? What are you guys worried about? Do you see the sky fall anywhere? No. Did you see anybody lose their jobs at the police stations in any of those places? No. So that's a fallacy too. There isn't no, oh, well, I guess we don't have nothing to do now that marijuana is legal. Even though if you look at the numbers, marijuana arrests outnumbered every other arrest put together. All violent crimes and property crimes, blue collar, white collar, you put it all together and marijuana still had more arrests. Just give me a break. Anthony, an Ingham County commissioner, did not dispute the sheriff's assertion of a link between legalization and crime. Quote, I always try to lean on the expertise of our law enforcement, said Anthony, who is running as to represent the Michigan district that includes Lansing and Lansing Township. Quote, I would have to do more of my own research. These people, man, these are the people that you basically vote for, and they go to Lansing and they represent you. They don't know anything. They don't know anything about important issues that matter. This shit's going to be on the ballot to legalize in November. And you're telling me that you haven't even looked up into it and whether or not it's a good thing or not? If this guy's right and he's ringing this alarm, maybe you should know about it. Just take his word for it? Well, if that's the case, then you should be ringing some bells too. Like, hey, man, this shit's going to make people go out and start killing each other. We can't do it. Come on, man. What is up with these politicians not having any kind of a soul at all? Oh, yeah, man. I'm thinking about looking into that. I don't really know, though. This is something that affects thousands of people in your district you're trying to represent, dipshit. Anthony will face Republican Rosalina Hernandez in November after winning 2 Democratic primary races in August for the same seat. One race is to fill a partial term vacated by Andy Shore, who resigned to become Lansing's mayor at the start of this year. The other race is for regular 2-year term that begins on January. Just come on, man. These Democrats are so... How do you expect anybody would want to vote for you if you don't have any convictions for any of these issues that matter to people? And then finally, Michigan had some leafer madness in the form of these coroner reports that are blaming Kratom for deaths in Michigan. And I don't believe it. I don't believe that Kratom has killed anybody. But let's check out this video.
If they're going to see more deaths.
Kratom killed my son. I'd never heard of it.
Tonight, the high-stakes debate over the safety of a botanical herb that is gaining popularity in West Michigan. It's called Kratom, and the DEA could move to outlaw it any day now.
Target 8 investigator Susan Samples broke the news. The herb has been tied to overdose deaths in Kent County. Susan.
The outcome of this debate could have life and death consequences. On the one side, the FDA and families who say Kratom itself is taking lives. On the other, passionate supporters of the supplement who say it's saving them.
I didn't stand a chance in theory for where I came from. I was destined to be an addict.
Pills and pain stole most of Amber Heitzman's 20s.
I have degenerative disc disease. That's what I used to justify the addiction, was that my back hurt so bad. I had this like huge breakdown at 25. Trying to commit suicide. So sorry.
Heitzman survived and beat her opioid addiction twice, but back pain threatened her recovery and her young marriage.
I was in a bad place, and I could feel the third relapse coming on, and I just Googled natural pain alternatives.
That's how she discovered Kratom, an herb from Southeast Asia.
For me, it worked right away. The first time I took it, it was amazing. I didn't feel the pain.
No pain and no high like traditional opioids, says Heitzman. It's easy to get online and in smoke shops. Kratom comes in capsules, teas, and powder. But that could change as the DEA considers a ban on Kratom. And the FDA warns that the herb supporters say saves lives can also take them.
When the medical examiner called me to tell me what the cause of death was, I was like, what? Spell it for me. I've never heard of it.
Peggy LaPena tried everything to help her son Joey, a GR Christian high school grad, kick drugs.
And it's like you're right there. And that's the hardest part. And as a mom, I'm supposed to protect him. I'm supposed to take care of him. And I couldn't.
All right, so I feel you, and I'm sorry for your loss. But it wasn't Kratom that killed your son. Alright? There's no way it was Kratom that killed your son. There's no way it was Kratom that killed anybody on its own and unadulterated. Because Kratom doesn't do that. And the coroner in this case...
I couldn't do it. I couldn't fix it.
He has no credibility. The coroner in this case, in my opinion, has no credibility. And his statement is a statement of ignorance.
That's the hardest thing.
Now, LaPena wants her son's death from acute Kratom toxicity to serve as a warning.
Kratom killed my son.
But Kratom supporters...
All right, so if you want to take that advice from her, go ahead. I'm not going to call her a liar for saying that Kratom killed her son, because that's what she was told and that's what she believes. I mean, does anyone else think that there's a motive from these medical examiners to straight up lie about this? Because it's a huge accusation to make if somebody was to say that. Hey, you guys are lying. They didn't die from Kratom. And now you're lying to these people's parents. There would have to be an incentive for something like that. Well, I don't have much faith in doctors after what happened with the opioid epidemic. We've seen it. We've seen how doctors worked with pharmaceutical industry salesmen and managers and stuff. And they did the bribery through the speaking fee style. We'll give you a bunch of money if you come to this seminar and do a little speech. And then we'll give you more money every time you, like, do some magic and get us more fentanyl people addicted to it. We know that all that's true and it happens. So why would we trust these medical examiners all of a sudden? We're supposed to just trust these guys? And a medical examiner, they got a tough job. They got to solve a mystery every time they go to work. Well, if you see something like Kratom and it's like, oh, easy jump to say that it caused the death. And the medical examiner just said in this case, well, you know what? Kratom's just opiate just like every other opiate. And if you do too much of it, you die just like you do of other opiates. That don't even make sense. It doesn't even tell you how opiates kill you in the first place. So
question the medical examiner's ruling in Joey's death and the 47 other fatal ODs the FDA has tied to the herb nationwide.
I've covered this.
Kratom is safe botanical that does not kill people.
They say Kratom can't kill by itself.
I'm a medical examiner, and I'm about to go to an interview at Target 8 News, or maybe in my office. They're going to come and interview me. What am I going to wear? A t-shirt? I'm a guy that does YouTube videos, and I wear t-shirts. If you're a medical examiner doing an interview for a news place, I was expecting to see like this Quincy looking setup with a fucking, white coat, name tag or something, or patch from where you work. I don't trust this guy one bit, man. I don't care about the t-shirt. I just don't like his demeanor. I don't trust him. I don't like his attitude. He acts like he's smart and you're dumb. He knows what he's talking about and you don't know shit.
Well, they're wrong.
Dr. Stephen Cole says...
How are we wrong? Millions of people, 5 million estimate, people do Kratom every fucking day. And somehow we're wrong that you can't overdose on just Kratom.
As there have been 2 deaths due to Kratom alone in Kent County, including Joey LaPena's. You're sure there were no other underlying factors in those deaths?
To the best of my ability.
And it's funny because that's not even true. He's lying right there. But it's funny how when you find Kratom only in somebody that died, it's always like they're clustered into some place where it's questionable that they have any Kratom deaths, but all of a sudden they have like a whole bunch of them at one medical examiner's jurisdiction, and they got the deaths. That's where all the deaths are concentrated.
Doing a complete autopsy.
Well, I mean, the one in Sweden's the weirdest one. The 9 deaths, and those were all from the same kind of commercial Kratom that was cut with something else that killed them. Every one of them. But those are the ones that got the Kratom shipment problem happening at customs. So this is all ridiculous. But let me go back here on this guy again.
Including Joey LaPena's. You're sure there were no other underlying factors in those deaths?
To the best of my ability, doing a complete autopsy.
So let's start with this.
So that's not a definitive no. When you say to the best of my ability, I did the autopsy, he didn't say, yeah, man, it was totally 100% Kratom, dude. No question about it. I have no doubt in my mind. He didn't say that. His answer was, I don't know, maybe. This is ridiculous.
Cole acknowledged LaPena's autopsy showed he also had Xanax in his system.
See, now this is a huge problem.
He has a slightly elevated level of
a slightly elevated
enough Xanax, Cole said to Xanax.
Elevated level of
not enough Xanax.
Alzapram. So a slightly elevated level of Xanax is not enough to kill you. We have heard about the combination of Kratom and other drugs killing people. Nobody in the Kratom community that I know of, that I'm aware of, is floating the idea that if you mix Kratom with things like Xanax, you're cool, or other drugs, it's a good mix, don't worry about it. I've never heard anybody say that. And I've never seen people that tabulate drug deaths do honest work. Like if they want it to be a combination of this and that killed you, then that's what it is. If they want it to be this alone, even though they found that in it, that's what it is. If you look at the overall statistics of overdose deaths, what they said in 2017 was over 70,000 people. Every one of them is a combination almost. I mean, not every one of them, but of the vast majority of them are combinations. And when every time you got one that's a combination, Xanax and fentanyl, then they later on they got an article about the Xanax deaths. Guess what? All those deaths that were Xanax and fentanyl, now all of a sudden they're just Xanax deaths. And then they have a story about how many people died from fentanyl. All the fentanyl and Xanax deaths that used to be Xanax deaths, now they're fentanyl deaths. That's what this guy's not doing though. That's exactly what he's doing. He's nitpicking it. She just pointed like, hey, he's Xanax. Well, that's a little bit more Xanax than normal, but it's not enough to kill you. Well, it's in conjunction with the Kratom. Maybe he didn't eat that good the day before too and didn't sleep for 3 days. There's a lot of things that could kill you, but having a little bit too much Xanax and Kratom in your system might fucking contribute. So to say that this guy died just because of the Kratom, right away, see, you're full of shit, dude.
Cole said to contribute significantly to the 21-year-old's death from Kratom, a substance the FDA says exposes users to the risk of addiction, abuse, and dependence.
See, I love how she just totally went total bias to his bias. Like, oh, this stuff is dangerous. The FDA says it's bad.
Look, it has opioid-like properties. If you overuse it or misuse it, you can die just like you can with any opioid.
That's not true.
Case.
End of the case. That is totally not fucking true, man. If you're going to say that, then why aren't you going to say that about Xanax? You don't think you could die from taking too much Xanax? This guy has a job, dude.
I honestly don't know what I'll do if it's made illegal.
Amber Heitzman hopes the feds will better regulate Kratom instead, test it for safety, make sure it's...
That's what everybody is hoping for, is for the FDA to stop fucking bullshitting around, lying to the public, illegally, trying to make Kratom sound like it's some kind of a dangerous thing. When even if you had 50 people that died from Kratom only, unquestionably, they ate too much Kratom and they died. And we told you how, well, this is how they died too, but you can't even do that with any of these Kratom deaths. They cannot tell you how they died. But somehow we're supposed to believe that just because someone had Kratom in their system, then Kratom had something to do with their death. It's a little bit hard to swallow it, guys. But everybody wants this to be regulated. At least so we know that there ain't salmonella in the batch. And, like I said, even if it's the safest thing going, you're full of shit to say that anything about this is dangerous. If 5 million people are using it, and you said, 50 people died from it? If that was true, if every one of those deaths were because of Kratom alone, it would still be one of the safest substances for opioid withdrawal, one of the safest substances for pain, one of the safest stimulants, you name it. 50 deaths ever known. And these are hypothetical because these deaths are all bullshit. To pin any of them on Kratom alone is bullshit. Do I know if it's dangerous to mix Kratom and other substances? I don't know. I'm not a fucking scientist and I haven't done research on it. But I'll tell you this, I wouldn't take my chances. After just seeing that story we just seen, I wouldn't eat no Xanax and take some Kratom. Just because. I don't really eat Xanax anyway. I don't do any kind of pharmaceuticals. And I just tried Kratom just to see what it was like. So I don't really have that much experience with Kratom. And when I did try it to see what it was like, I'll tell you this, I was more afraid before I did it than what actually happened. And basically it was kind of a non-issue. Like, I wouldn't even really be able to give you a review about it, other than it did do pretty good for the pain. As far as a stimulant goes, it wasn't even that much of a stimulant. It wasn't horrible. I mean, I was still able to kind of like feel like I didn't need to drink coffee or whatever. So, but bottom line, guys, we need real science and real that medical examiner was not being, can we agree he was not being genuine? Like that, there was something about that that just didn't feel right. But anyway, let's finish this up.
Stored and labeled properly.
If they ban it, they're going to see people not being able to work who work now thanks to Kratom.
But it was Kratom, says Peggy LaPena, that cost her family everything.
I would like it outlawed.
And what good does that do? What good does it do to outlaw substances? So if you outlaw it, maybe your son got some Kratom that had some other drug in it, like fentanyl. Because we've seen that. We've seen fentanyl show up in everything. It didn't show up in his blood test, though. So maybe it was something else that they don't even test for. Who can know? But if you're talking about banning Kratom, you're talking about making another substance on the black market that has no regulation and oversight, no concern about quality or whether it's laced with something. And of course people will lace it with something. That's the first thing that happens when something gets made illegal, is they try to mix it with everything in the book to try to get smaller sizes of it to get more of it to the market. Because right now, Kratom, you got to eat like a handful practically for the desired effects or whatever. And as harmless as that actually is, it's still eating a lot of plant material, right? And it's for somebody that's selling it, you would have to have a lot of that plant material. I mean, think about it. A marijuana dose is it's about 1/3 of a gram or less, depending on your tolerance levels of marijuana flowers. So like you could roll a joint and smoke about 1/3 of it and you're good to go. That's 1/3 of a gram. So we're talking about like 9 times, 10 times more than that. Imagine selling that. You'd have to have a lot of it on hand, you know. And I don't know how growing it. I've heard it's hard to grow unless you live in a really, really tropical kind of environment.
I would like to save any other family from going through this.
Well, that's not going to work. Because first of all, your son was recovering from a heroin addiction or a super bad opioid addiction, according to you. And then he started doing Kratom. So what do you, even if making Kratom illegal is successful and they take it away and it's no longer available to anybody, what's going to happen then to somebody that's trying to recover from heroin or opioid addiction? They're just going to not be able to have something like Kratom to use to recover with, and they're going to die anyway. And I'm pretty sure that your son probably died from
State Senator Rick Jones had planned to introduce a bill to outlaw Kratom here. It's already illegal in 7 states. But after a face-to-face meeting with the American Kratom Association last week, the senator has compromised, and his bill now would only outlaw adulterated or lab-enhanced Kratom. Natural strains could still be sold, but only to people over 18.
I don't really see a problem with this list right here, except for how you're going to know. You know, in order for this list to work, you have to have regulated sales to go along with those.
DEA tells me it will determine soon if Kratom should be made a Schedule I controlled substance like heroin or LSD. I'm Target 8 investigator Susan
Definitely
Samples.
not. That's not going to help anything. Well, guys, that's my Michigan update. My God, didn't mean to be this long, but that's what we got. We're going to end it there. Peace.